we have to take care of ourselves, and this answers to you, how do you observe yourself if you're hungry? But I don't believe anybody in this room is starving. So that kind of hunger, if you're talking about that kind of hunger, I don't think we have a problem with observing ourselves and see, in other words, I don't drink alcohol, I don't smoke cigarettes, I used to do all of that. I used to eat stuff. And so when I quit, I had to observe myself desiring something that wasn't necessary. Not even that it wasn't necessary, I do things that aren't necessary now, but they were harmful. So that's how we can make it. Stop doing those things. And I think
I'm asking questions to
Yeah.
so you unfold the conversation.
Does that
I'm very aware
ring
of
with
what you're
anybody?
talking about. Personal responsibility.
personal responsibility,
Yeah.
and just notice how things are. Then decide if that's what you want, rather than, oh, no, the things are this way.
Okay.
Victim.
Now, we know clearly that capitalism and all these systems are designed to scramble us. You have to work to, I'm just making a point
Yeah.
that it is intentional. The scrambling is intentional. So yes, the unscrambling for yourself must be intentional, but you also have to receive the information in a way that penetrates you to the point where you begin to ask a question.
Correct, the right question.
The right question.
Absolutely.
Now, I felt like I interrupted you.
No, I'm moderating, so I have to keep us on time.
Okay.
And we seem to be enjoying ourselves. There's a question, the gentleman in black?
Yes.
But I'm sort of like interested by show of hands. How many of us here are willing to give up sugar?
Oh, yeah.
I don't smoke.
I mean, that's a broad question. Certain things are made, but intentional
Sugar.
eating,
Give up sugar?
I would. Totally. Yeah. I understand. Sugar is crack. Sugar is crack. You know that.
Now you tell me.
Put that soda.
All right, let's
clear this throat.
How many people want to take a free economics class?
Ooh.
I didn't hear you. Say that again?
I know you.
How many of you here would like to take a free
free
economics class?
Yeah.
So we can do it, right? All right, so the gentleman in black and the gentleman in the back in white.
So like I hear us talking about the problems and like the corruption and these different puppets and everything, but what does the ideal American society look like? Like if we keep on, I don't know, talking about again all of the problems, then what should we be striving towards? Like what does it look like? I guess.
That's a
Good
good
question.
question.
Yeah.
Let's take two questions and then we'll try to. And you are also, it's not just questions from you, you may comment on or answer questions as well.
Okay, we're good.
James.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, so I mean, brother, you mentioned the people a number of times and what other people to do to change this circumstances. And just my scant read of history, I've observed that every significant movement in history is a minority movement. So anytime, I think that's somewhat of a con game that we're told that we need to sit and wait for 99.9, 100% of the people to line up and we're going to move on some task. That's just never happened. Even the American Revolution, the Cuban Revolution, any relatively recent or highly notable movement. So I've had the perspective of being involved in certain activities and seeing that it's basically a conservative minority that will move in a particular direction. And just to the point of being, when you talk about just those people being able to observe themselves, get some insight, speak to like-minded people or just people in their environment, I've seen that process work. So that's just my anecdotal account.
My question was, I didn't misunderstand my question. My question was not to intimate that it didn't work, that it couldn't work. I just simply asked them when in history so we could take a look at those who have been able to actuate it, what actually went down in order for us to move people forward. My personal speaking, it's a crisis of leadership.
Exactly. And I think
We do not have individuals right now today that clear vision and understanding of how, his question, to move the country forward. Because it does require a certain amount of voices that have the vision and the clarity. And the people keep hearing it and hearing it. That hits the conditioning. Because you have to tell somebody something, I don't know how many times, to get them to be able to say it. So we have people like Malcolm Martin, as you said, Gandhi, and many others that, you know, Medgar Evers, blah, 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 yes. So I wasn't intimated at all that it is not possible. I just want you to lift the narrative and intentionally frame it and let me hear it. That's what I was saying.
And I think
Does that make sense to you?
I think it raises the question also.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Okay.
think also raises the question: is are there politicians who are willing to say the right thing
And die.
and risk getting not getting
Well,
elected?
there also shouldn't be.
And risk not getting elected.
And die.
Wait, so, I just say, just so,
Oh, sorry, to Kevin. Oh, you, I didn't mean that. That's what I was really saying.
no, but, so we need somebody to come out and finally say that, and this is almost sacrilege, that, democracy and capitalism are not necessarily
The same
compatible.
thing.
They're not compatible.
Right, that's right.
We've taken the two, which really are two separate systems, we've grafted them together into this Frankenstein of a country.
Yeah.
And we live now that, like, you know, Black Friday is this thing where people go and kill each other for television sets.
Right.
And that's become this holiday because it's a day off. And so do we need somebody to come out and say, these things are not compatible? And they can be separate, I don't know, I'm just.
Yeah, that's
Well,
a good question. I like that.
Jim
But
Carrey.
I just want
Jim,
to also raise the question of crisis of society, not just of leadership, but of society at large. Do we need messiahs at this time?
Do we need what?
Do we need saviors? Do we still need the leader king at this time, when in fact the definition of leadership is now changing? The definition of leadership is now that each one of us, personally take on the responsibilities of leadership, not leaders as the boss. As the guy we're constantly looking for the Messiah. Do we need Messiahs in the 21st century?
What we need is people, listen, there are people who run 501c3s. I care, but I can't be there every single day. I do have to go and do what I do for a living.
That's right.
I can't be there every day. I need to do a woman, I don't care who it is. I need the people that are in the trenches every day. I got to support what they are consistently able to do.
Their
Because
hierarchy
I
of
cannot
needs.
tell
You
you
need it.
that I can be there every day. So yes, we do need leaders. Inasmuch as we just said, we live in a system that is trying to pull us apart at every turn anyway, who understand completely that the collective is a leverage. I don't want you to have that leverage. So I'm going to distract you. I'm going to do everything I can, smoke and mirrors, sleight of hand to pull you apart. So yes, we do need those leaders, boots on the ground all the time, and the rest of us make sure that we are intentionally serving these efforts to create the change that is necessary. But it takes day to day. I've been involved with so many organizations, but I give the credit to the people. It's like I played Cuddy. I understand, but guess what? The guy that it was based on, he's there in that community every day. I can't function the same way he can, but I can help him create the type of results that I'd like to see happen on a broad scale, that's for sure. That's where I'm at. Now, if you have new information for me or another way I should be approaching this, then please let me know. Because I'm trying to leverage what I have. But I'll be damned if I can run that organization the way that young man can on a day-to-day basis. I cannot.
But I think the key is also make sure everybody want to be a leader. We have to make sure they have information.
Exactly.
Because the American people are the most uninformed people on the planet.
1,000%.
Uninformed.
That's right.
We're the laughing stock of the world, and the world's connected now.
As evidenced by the president that, I'm not here to bash anybody. I operate out of compassion. My desire for every human being, young lady, and I'm telling you this sincerely, is that none of us suffer.
Right.
Okay? And that all of us, through inner peace and a clear understanding of who we are able to actuate in this world and benefit ourselves and others.
Yeah.
That's what I'm about, sincerely.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to function as a unit function as a whole. When I learn from nature, then look at the ants. They get their orders, there's people who look at the geese. Man, nature shows us our best example of leadership, and there's not a singular thing in those minds of the ants. When the ant goes down to that role of leading in that particular mission, goes down, the next one steps up in that role.
There's no queen ant. There's
Yeah,
no
but
queen ant. There's no queen ant. There is no queen ant, man. Every ant is absolutely the same. I understand that we all are inherently the same, but the functionality is not. And we have to actuate. The functionality is not the same. My equivalency as a human being, of course, is the same as the next man. But that brother that's running that community center every day is a different functionality than me. And I have a different role towards his end.
Function as a unit.
Yes, it is a unit, but within that unit, we each have different roles towards the collective. That's all I'm saying. Yes, of course. I mean, right. We all have some, yeah, of course, I agree with
We
you.
know when you have one person assigned to one task, and your enemy orientation of that one person, we need to change that thinking.
Oh, absolutely, that's
We
fair.
must find a way to understand that we come in as a unit from the beginning, in the middle, and the end. Step up.
Okay.
You were trying to make a point.
This was an observation from my own life history, is that growing up in New York and living in an apartment with rent and being the landlord, but suddenly growing up and moving into a co-op in New York City has changed sort of the way I've thought of things, because it's a collective. We all sort of work for the greater good of the building. There are some leaders, right? There's a board. They're elected as part of the process, because not everybody can be involved in it. And like while we were talking, I was thinking, like, what would solve the problems on smaller scales? And I was like, well, what if we all lived in these like mini collectives, like co-ops, where we all sort of be responsible for each other, or we all sort of had to, it's so much different than like living in a house in a community. Like, because you have your own house and you can do what you want. But when you're in an apartment in New York City, the walls are thin, you got to think of your neighbor, you can't put up that big television set to blast sound through it. Like, there's a lot of dancing around to try to live peacefully so they don't kill each other. And we do a decent job of it. Not everybody's happy. And I was thinking, like, what would that be like on a larger scale? I mean, someone might say communism, you know, the bad word, but not necessarily, because you know, we're in this building and we're all different types of people, you know. And so, anyway, I was just thinking about that when you were, Chad, when you were asking about what could we do on the smaller scale and bring it bigger. I was like, if we all could just, if everybody could experience what it's like to live in a co-op, it's a trip.
Yeah.
That's what it is, really.
And there's really nothing like it on the outside. There's a little bit of democracy, there's a little bit of, you know,
I
communism.
saw it function in the grocery store that I had to work in.
Oh, really?
And then, yeah, you know, on Union.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the co-op, they're all natural.
Right,
You know, everybody had their role within that towards the end of continuing to propagate what was being offered and delivered in goods and services to the people who wanted fresh food. So yeah, we all had our different roles within that.
And everybody plays to their strengths,
Right,
you know, there's
absolutely.
you know, some people rise to leadership because they're able to organize
You
better
speak,
or something
right.
like that, yeah.
Martin Luther King was a very effective speaker, right?
So I have a quick question. My name's Ryan.
Hey, Ryan.
So I understand that we need to become a little bit more self-aware in order to make better decisions for ourselves. What's some of the best places that we can get better pools of information to piggyback on top of that?
Great question.
Well, you can listen to Afrobeat Radio every Saturday from 6 to 7 p.m.
I heard about
You can, I'm just kidding.
I heard about this book. It's called Shock Exchange.
Now, everybody's going to come from a personal place. So I'm going to tell you personally what is part of the experience I'm having that he's talking about. For me, it's meditation. For me, it's yoga. And it's Buddhism. Those are the things that allow me to turn my eyes inward, see me fully, do not BS myself, and exorcise those demons that are operating inside this huge brain that have caused me to not to be nearly as effective as a human citizen of the world, to be able to remove that ignorance, to remove that delusion. And a lot of what he's talking about, Buddha calls it samsara.
Yep.
It's but it is an intentional confusion that I had to be able to see. And when I saw it, it shook me like you would not believe. It was like an earthquake of physics. Like, oh my goodness. I have been really that hook, line, and sinker, that ignorant, that deluded, and the choices. Now the other aspect of that, which they speak about, look what I was handed from my parents. And it was, I don't hear my karma, I don't, whatever, I don't hear. That's just a thought. That's just what you choose to think. But I can show you how what I was handed by parents who were ill-equipped and ill-prepared to be parents, what they handed me. And it's only, and my brother took another, his personal course was Christianity. He's a minister today. Yes, we all have to find a way to transform out of this base ignorance that's been, we have all been inoculated, again, race being another one. You understand? That is the biggest delusion and ignorance, that they've been able to perpetrate that you just would not believe. But it takes peeling away the layers. And if an individual does not have the information and is looking through the wrong lens, forgive the pun, they will fight me tooth and nail. And I'm telling them a deeper truth. That's how beautiful it is. And the conditioning is designed to tell me in here, hey, Jeff, what the hell do you think you're doing? What is wrong with you? You can't help nobody. You can't even help yourself. Look where you came from. So I have to take personal responsibility for exercising all of that. And it doesn't disappear. I just stand in a position of wisdom and faith that it's like, a wild elephant, right? We put him on the chain and he comes running at you right there, right? You got to know that your chain of wisdom is gonna go right before it gets to you. Because it's gonna be coming like it's coming and you're gonna feel it like, oh my God, it's gonna get, and that thing goes zip, and it can't touch you. So then you begin to go and look at that big elephant and say, okay, I see you, boy.
The illusion.
You exactly.
Can the two other panelists?
Yes, please, by all means. Yes.
I want to say, I'm thinking about a question. I wish I could point you to, say like a website that had all of this information.
Well, I mean, I know that, it's not all in one place. I'm
Right.
just asking, just,
I really like to think that compassion is very important. Compassion for self and compassion for others. And I think doing unto others, what we want them to do to us. And which sort of like brings me back to the purpose of this conversation, Trump and the global economy. And I want to really ask us to think about it in the context of a country that we've mentioned earlier today in this conversation, which is Haiti, as an example. I'm going back to Haiti because of the recent comments that President Trump was supposed to have have made about Haiti and African countries and El Salvador. And understanding that, I think you can forgive him and say he made an an off comment, which was not diplomatically correct in the first place. But if you were to examine the history of the United States and the role that Haiti played in the struggle for this country to free itself from, English rule, and the way the United States turned around and paid Haiti back negatively, the role that the United States have played over the years, over the course of over 100 years, a century, in a negative way in destroying Haiti. And for our president to make that comment that he made, and that comment did not come from nowhere. This is how we have treated Haiti. You see, this is how, France is also responsible for what's going on in Haiti today. But so, my thinking is, it's important for us to think about how we have to save ourselves. But sometimes you have to save others in order to save yourself, you see. And I think I would like for us to think about that for a moment, and I invite your response to that Haiti comment. It's not unique to Haiti. We can talk about African countries, El Salvador, in any and every of those countries, the United States has benefited, but has also been a destructive force and continues to be a destructive force. Even under our former president, who is part African. So I invite your comments. I see you.
Well, I was just going to say, I think he was asking for media sources.
Right.
To see if Ralph or the land baron,
I write for
what sources of media have more penetrating analysis to these kinds of things that are alternative.
I think I mentioned that there's no singular source for that. I mean, I wish that there's a website I can say, okay, we've been collecting all this information and...
No, I get that. My overall is just like, you say land, where can we get more information to really understand, that aspect? And, you're an analyst, where can we get that meat?
I write for
really learn that.
I write for a site called Seeking Alpha, and what they do is it's called crowdsourced research.
I actually get Seeking Alpha every day.
It's called crowdsourced research. And what they're doing is
Repeat that again, please.
it's called crowdsourced research. Seeking Alpha, seekingalpha.com. And what they do is a bunch of guys, be like me, be like Wuyi, like the land baron, be like Chad, like you, who write about things. Somebody might write an article about Microsoft and actually used to work at Microsoft. Somebody might write an article about Microsoft, and in the comments, you may have somebody who's commenting anonymously who may have worked at Microsoft. And so what it gets comments from the feedback from the crowd. You get people from, let's say if I write an article about, the last article I wrote was about a company called Allergan. What they do is, it's like a roll-up, a healthcare roll-up. And they went and bought debt to, I was telling Ashley earlier, they went and bought debt to buy these companies, and now drug prices are falling. And the FDA is approving drugs faster to compete against proprietary drugs or branded drugs. So their revenue's declining, but they have to pay back the debt now. And so I read an article by Allergan, coming from the perspective of being a finance guy. You have comments from people who used to work at Allergan, people from healthcare, people from the government, and all these comments from the crowd, what they found out over years of data and research, that the crowd is more accurate than a single person. Picking stocks from the crowd, getting comments from him, and you, from different backgrounds, is more accurate than actually a person picking stocks. And so you have people who have expertise in real estate. One of the guys who came and spoke on the last panel was Professor Lance Broughton. He writes for Seeking Alpha. He's an economics professor. And you have people who write about things that, maybe write about IT, maybe write about Intel or Microsoft or Qualcomm, who actually have 30 years of expertise in a particular industry. Maybe writing about how Trump's policies are going to affect the economy, and they have, professors or, worked at a think tank for decades. So that's a site where you can get a wealth of information from experts who have no incentive. They aren't tied to a bank. They have no incentive to be pro-Trump or anti-Trump.
Word, do you have any?
I think I've talked a lot, yeah.
Did you say Howard's in? One other thing, have you ever heard of the Working Families Party? A political
Yes.
party called the Working Families Party? Yeah. Yep. You've heard of them? You ever checked out their site?
I can't say that I
Okay.
have, but I've heard it.
Okay. Just
But not something
another,
that I'll check out.
yeah, just another source, that's all.
You said, somebody said something, like, are we done?
We're getting close to it.
That's
Is
fine.
there any ladies that have
There was
any ladies, because they only ask one question. We should give the ladies the floor. Because I think it's important because you talk about some fight back, and women are fighting back against, and that's a populist message, this Me Too movement. Women are fighting back, and they're standing their ground.
Against
And they're brave,
objectification.
and they're brave, they're doing this, they're braver than I could ever be.
I wouldn't say that, but
I'm
not here nor there.
I'm trying to be, I know that. I'm just trying to gas them up.
Oh, you're trying to gas them up, okay. Okay.
I'm stuck for
So we're coming close to the end of this, then we're gonna wrap it up in a very short while.
Right.
Do you
We
want
have
to
a
speak?
question over here. Okay.
Well, we also want to save enough time to, we'll be here by 9 o'clock. We want to save enough time for everybody to meet Chad. And when you finish, I'm the headliner. I'm at the end of the line. After you meet Chad, you can meet me.
Listen,
All right, that's it.
I live right around the corner. I ain't going nowhere. It doesn't matter. Just want to hear from other voices.
Yes.
That's all.
We have your voice.
Yeah, I had a question for Christopher, actually. With the infrastructure, potential infrastructure plan coming up, do you have anything that you're looking out for in terms of, seeing how these transactions happen, not crony capitalism, but through the lens that you were kind of analyzing money and the way things move and capital is exchanged in the investor class. Are there any things that you might be looking out for?
Minimum wage increase is buying power increase, that's what we should be looking at.
Just one quick follow-up, Ralph. How would you, in 30 seconds, what is your preferred? If you could dictate how the infrastructure deal would come together and how it would benefit the most people, how would that be done?
I would just say, the states should design.
States?
Yeah, by definition, you should be. If states can't come up with the money, give them. The federal government should give them low-interest loans to help them fund the infrastructure. But by definition, if President Trump, if you say, well, when the states decide, he takes a hard line. Oh no, we have to have a public-private partnership. You know that. Why does it matter? You know that if he spends $1 trillion, $999.9 billion is going to go to his cronies, and maybe $100 million will go to infrastructure. We already know this. And I wrote about it in a book too, years ago.
So, we're coming to a close, but I'm trying to bring the global in the panel's title, Trump and the global economy. So I'm trying to bring the global back into the conversation before we go. That was the purpose of my Haiti comment.
Right.
So now, before we go, anybody in the audience may comment on this and on the panel as well. What should we expect to be the impact of Trump's economic policy on the rest of the world? This is a very important question. It's not just about what's happening in New York City or in the United States. There are more people outside of this country who are impacted by the decisions that our leaders make. Comments, and we'll wrap it up.
It really depends on how smart citizens of the world become right now, because Donald Trump is not good for business. as much as we might think he's good for business. Because when the consumer recognizes that this guy is representing a bunch of corporate heads that don't have our best interests, like there's some companies that have stockholders that want the company to produce products and services that are good for their consumer. Now, today, we have to make sure that because the product is not produced as a good product for the consumer, we're going to lose resources that could be going towards competing against our competitors. So we got to demand companies that patronize, that does the best thing for us, the consumer. Donald Trump is unable to do that because he's looking to appease those who are only looking for the bottom line, looking out for themselves. And smart businessmen are not looking to follow someone who's looking out just for the bottom line, because we're looking at corporations that have made major commitments in being sustainable, retainable, and that the whole issue of being proactive for the planet. That's the way the global economy is going. Donald Trump and his little cronies are against that. So all the consumer has to do is make sure we stand up for those companies who are for greening. That's all the consumer has to do. Stand up for every corporation, small, big, whatever it is, that has the best interest of the planet, greening.
Anybody else? Please.
I mean, I would say that.
Oh.
I had a question about the new Federal Reserve Chairman, how he'll impact the economy as well as the tax cuts. And you were talking earlier about the investor class and how they're hoarding the cash. You could just speak about the marginal propensity to consume and how that will affect economics and our economic outlook for the future in the next few years.
Any other comments? All right, who wants to go first?
I'll just say that the new Federal Reserve Chairman, I think he's talked about raising interest rates. We'll see if he actually does it. I mean, we've gone like over a decade of record low interest rates. We'll see if he actually does it. And we know that Trump likes loyalty, and if he raises interest rates, it may hurt the economy.
Well, how will that impact on the global economy?
The
How
global economy?
would China, for instance, respond to that? And how would countries that have economies that are not as prosperous?
Well, we already know that we already see cracks in other countries already. Brazil, Venezuela's in trouble. And what Trump is doing, again, he's cutting taxes. Wants to invest $1 trillion in infrastructure. To match, you're adding stimulus, you're adding the juice, right? So when he goes and starts a trade war with China or what have you, if it has an effect, negative effect, it's offset by these positive effects. You can't really see whether his policies are good or bad because he keeps adding stimulus. You follow what I'm saying? He keeps adding stimulus to the U.S. economy, so you can't really tell if the economy's strong or not, or if his policies are working or not. It can create a short-term boost, but we've already had 30 trillion aid already. We've already had 30 trillion stimulus. The economy's so strong, why are we still in the juice? If I just keep adding the juice, you're never gonna know. You're never gonna know how strong the U.S. economy is because he's gonna keep adding stimulus to it. And then when he does something abroad, you can't tell the full effect on the U.S. economy. If he talks about trade war with China. China, ultimately, I think China is the linchpin because they buy so much commodities. That helps the third world countries. And also helps these big, because they also invest in infrastructure and stimulate their own economy. It also helped these big U.S. manufacturers like Caterpillar and John Deere.
We know what happened to Marion Jones, right?
Well,
What happened to Marion Jones? When they found out she was juicing.
Oh, yeah.
What happened to Ben Competitive? What happened when they found out that they were juicing? So is that what we're headed towards? All this, basically saying he's playing smoke and mirrors?
He's going to keep the juice going.
What's the thing that's going to be able to expose it? You know, inevitably the dude that created the juice said, I did it. And, you know, there was a big body, the IOC, that was coming at that. So who's coming at, you understand what I'm saying? Us.
Because you also got to realize that, you know, these journalists are not real journalists. They're like publicists. Mm-hmm. If you don't write something positive about Donald Trump, you don't get access to the White House. Right. So you write something positive about Trump to get access to the White House. And you want to get the information flow from the White House. No, these journalists don't even understand economics anyway. So they're going to keep, you know, trying to appease him so you get access to the White House. And you have to get away from, again, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, because Trump is fake news. He says, of all the things he's done, exposing the media for being fake news, is the one populist thing he's accomplished. And we need something we all need. And it has to come from him, come from us. People say, y'all crying. Great. It comes from a rich white guy. It's got to be true. You know what I'm saying? It makes you, that's the one populist thing he's actually done, exposed the media for being fake news.
Wow. Who's your economic watchdog? Who do you
Nobody.
read and listen to
Nobody.
to say, this guy is telling us?
I listen to it myself.
Okay.
Because
Well, what are your
maybe
main
David Stockman's pretty good.
Who?
David Stockman.
Okay.
He used to be Reagan budget director.
Mm-hmm.
He tells it like it is, but most of the economists, it's like you have a choice as an economist. You can be an insider, you can sign off on bailouts to Wall Street and this crony capitalism and bailouts to these donors. You can sign off on that, and you can be on CNBC and CNN, and you can write books, and you can get $1 million deals.
Mm-hmm.
But history's gonna look at you on kind of an idiot. Or you can tell the truth, and nobody's ever gonna listen to you. You're never gonna be on CNN. You're not gonna be, yeah. So they've cashed out.
Okay.
The economists have cashed out.
Mm.
And none of them, you can't listen to anyone, because nobody predicted the recession, 2007, 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody.
Right. Mm. Wow.
All right, should we wrap it up?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. It's been a real pleasure to have you, and especially the ladies. Next time, make sure you don't come alone. An extra that you sort of have more women.
Yeah.
We need more women to
Don't-
speak up. We
don't
need
be
more
so
women's
loud.
voices.
Don't be so loud.
That's very important. And thank you all for coming. The next Trump and the global economy will be in 3 months' time.
In May. It's
Right.
gonna be in May. We're gonna have John McLaughlin.
And we're going to have some very. Who else is confirmed?
Well, John McLaughlin's gonna be. I don't know who else yet.
Yeah, all right. So it's going to be quite exciting, and hopefully we've made some more progress. I wish you all good luck. Keep asking the questions. It's very important. And if you have answers, bring them to us so that we can share with everyone. Thank you for coming.
Okay.